So welcome to the channel, guys. Welcome to another intriguing, interesting chat with a fellow that I've been in touch with for quite a while now, probably months, and I've followed him for some time. And not many people know much about him. He always talks to other people, but doesn't really reveal much about himself, although he does share his wisdom on his YouTube channel with his short videos in the Penguin Sanctuary in South Africa, Simonstown. So we're going to get down to it. We're going to talk to Franklin, and we're going to find out all about him, about his life, his journey, where he's from, where he is now, what he currently does. So Franklin, welcome to the channel.
Thank you very
And
much.
tell
It's an
us
honor.
all, let's just start off with who you are, your name, where you're situated, where you're located, and then we'll go from there.
Okay, well, my first name is Franklin. Um, my second name is Patrick. So some people know me as Patrick. Some people know me as Franklin. When I'm not working, I'm Franklin. When I'm working, I'm Patrick, because it's Franklin Patrick Williams. This is my name. And sorry, I'm getting quite smoked out here by the beautiful holy smoke of frankincense and myrrh.
Yeah.
I loaded it up full to make sure that it doesn't run out. So yeah, the BushWhisperer is my tag. That's my channel. That's what people know me as. A lot of people have teased me about the name, like BushWhisperer. What are you getting at there? Well, it started out with the idea of the wilderness, nature.
Mm.
So I'm a shaman by trade. It's what I do. It's my 9 to 5. It's my day job, if you will.
Mm.
Well, day job, night job, 7 days a week job.
Whenever job.
Yeah, all the time job. Been accused of being a workaholic. It's hard not to take your work home with you when you love your work and when your work is an expression of who you are and what you've always wanted to do your whole life. And I remember speaking to my mother when I was 12 and explaining to her, I figured out what I want to do with my life. And it was like, this occult is going to be my life because this is what I was made for. This is why my life has been the way it is. So obviously she was a bit wary because she'd come into my room and she'd find all my grimoires under my bed and she'd be like, what are those?
Mm.
Old mindsets, people get scared. Obviously I was studying the occult, deep occult, when I was very young, and I was having my mentoring guided by elderly gentlemen that I'd met along the way, or that met me, somehow befriended me, somehow found me, that I was friends with, because I had a very interesting childhood. Started when I was 3, for my occult shamanic training, if you will, because I fell into a pool. Or another way of putting it was I was convinced to go into the pool by beings that weren't physical.
Mm.
And I was having this telepathic argument with these beings, saying, no, I can't go there. It's going to be problems if I fall in that water. And they were like, no, get your boat. You can do it. You can be fine. I was like, no, 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 no. I've been warned about this. Anyway, in the end, they convinced me that I was going to be fine. And I fell into the pool and I drowned. And they tell you that drowning is lovely and it's not traumatic. Yes, it's lovely after it's traumatic. It's wonderful after it's the most painful experience you've ever had in your life.
Mm.
Or the pain of like 1,000 deaths all at once. That's drowning. So anyway, I drowned and I was very young. I was 3. There wasn't any need for life review at age 3. What life is there to review?
Mm.
What choices have I made?
Mm.
I am the subject of my mother and my father's choices. So I just experienced the universe unravel, saw it turn inside out. I was like, wow, this is cool. Damn, this whole thing's made out of sound. It's pretty loud.
Mm.
And the vibrations just got faster and harder and faster and harder. And I was like, wow, this is taking me on a journey. And then I was like watching the whole thing unravel, the 3 pieces coming out of each other. And the fear, of course, came up like, damn, I'm forgetting people I love. This isn't
Mm.
on. Like, this is shocking. That was where it got a bit real for me. Realizing there was nothing I could do to hold on to the memories because they literally get unwound out of your consciousness field. It's like you're a reel reeling in information.
Mm.
At the end of your life, it unwinds.
Mm. Yeah, yeah,
Just unreal.
yeah,
And the real, you
yeah.
just watch a real empty and you go, but I don't want to forget these. I don't want to forget those. Don't wanna,
Mhm.
you don't have a choice. It's the way it rolls. So yeah, after that, I was very much um, in continuous communication with non-physical beings.
Mm.
My guides were with me almost all the time. Wind has changed and it's coming right onto my face. So yeah, I was in continuous communication with the guides and experiencing past lives as like a daily affair.
So
And
was that just like when you were experiencing these past lives, were they kind of like daydreams that that you were seeing every day?
well, actually, I would go to sleep at night and I would relive this one life in Japan again and again and
Right.
again
Okay.
until I knew all the characters well.
Yeah. Yeah.
I was like, I knew my horse, you know,
Right. Right. Right.
armor, my sword, my, you know,
Right.
and I was a general, right? I was quite hairy though. Like the Japanese are not supposed to be
Yeah.
hairy. I was a bit hairy.
Right. And
Anyway.
you've carried it through to this life as well.
Yeah, well, there's no getting away from the bush whisperer. Whispering through his bush. But yeah, it was a continual dream I kept reliving and having etheric experiences and astral experiences and being trapped out of my body. And there were always these beings looking for me, these funny big black cats that would like crawl around on the other side, the other planes,
Mm.
looking for me. And my leprechaun would come and dance, and he would do his little dances for me, and
So
they would just forget
is
where I was.
the leprechaun like a guide of yours or a protector or someone that you work with?
He
That
was with me
energy.
when I was a child as an extension of my connection with nature.
Right.
Um, I needed that when I was young to come and dance for me.
Mm.
Um, I sort of absorbed it into myself in a sense.
Mm.
So like I can sort of work in that mode, if that
Right.
makes sense.
So was so when you were 3 year old and you were aware of these non-physical beings, um, are some of them still are they all connected to you now still? Do they still work with you, work through you, or have they changed? Or
I've gotten more connected to my inner guides.
mm,
Um, I mean, obviously, there's been a lot of training since I was 12.
mm,
So since 1989, my training started in earnest.
mm,
My first real guru was a Shihan. I was lucky enough to have a Shihan, which is a very
mm,
rare thing to have in the West.
mm,
Because normally you get sensei, but I
yeah,
was with a Shihan who had metaphysical powers,
mm,
and he was a master basically. And he clocked me immediately. Came into his dojo, he clocked me. He says, "This one, you must come to my class for my senseis." And he was teaching me meditation. I was like, okay, cool.
mm,
But
mm,
I took it. I like, well, I rolled with it. Like, let's do this part of my daily agenda then.
mm,
Because I did train. I think I trained harder than anyone in Cape Town.
mm,
I did train hard, trained a lot, trained morning, afternoon, evening,
mm,
twice in the evening. And, so I trained like 4 times a day.
yeah,
And then I went to classes,
mm,
5 classes a week,
yeah,
2 classes a week, plus then 2 squad trainings for like, provincial and SA champs. And then um, got together on Sunday with all the people from other schools of martial arts to go and do full contact in the dojo and make
mm.
sure there's no one there watching. Because we weren't supposed to do that, as you know, and we were naughty. But we did have all the pads and all the things in here, so we could basically pad up and beat the crap out of each other, which we did.
Mm,
So yeah, it was always a part of my point until I was 5. They went away.
mm,
And that was with a very interesting circumstance with the scorpion. See,
Okay.
okay, so let's take this back. My life was interesting when I was young, right? My mom didn't want to be a housewife and a mother. She had lofty dreams of being a dancer, which she became, a ballet dancer and a, um, modern jazz, all different sorts of dance. She
Mm,
became one of South Africa's top choreographers, actually.
mm,
Um, and I say that with faith, because the biggest shows she was normally the, Miss South Africa pageant. She was her dancers.
mm,
But when Namibia became independent, that was her gig. So she had the main show, her and her troupe of dancers, and she used to choreograph, and she was also a dancer. So yeah, she did what she did what it said on the label. But when I was young, she took me away from my dad when I was like 1 year old, and she didn't really know how to look after me because she was very young. So
mm,
things got a bit strained, and she had kept my dad away from me. He didn't know where I was. My dad found out where I was, and he came and found me alone in the flat, which was upstairs. It was only on the first floor, but outside our building there was on a hill in Hillbrow, which was steep hills. There was a carve away, basement level carve away. So it was like almost
right.
2 stories, almost 2 floors up.
Mm,
And he had gotten 3 of those long broomsticks, and because in those days broomsticks were longer than what they were today, he had
mm,
gotten 3 of those broomsticks, tied them together, and he could just about tap the base of the window.
mm,
And I climbed out, sitting there. Obviously, I was alone in the flat. It was late, early hours in the morning. My mom was out doing whatever it was she did. Um, and he was like, "Jump." I was like, "What do you mean jump?" He was like, "Jump, daddy, catch." I was like, "Wow." We're talking about 15, 16, you know,
mm,
I'd say it must have been about 15 meters.
mm,
No, am I exaggerating? 15 meters? Um, well, I don't know, 10 meters, 20, 25 feet, whatever it was. No, how high was it? It was high. It
mm,
was really, really high.
mm. And
I'm
especially at
exaggerating.
that age, it seems, I suppose it'll seem even higher than what it actually was,
Yeah,
probably.
yeah. No, but it was about 2 floors. So
Mm,
whatever 2 floors is.
yeah. You're probably looking
Um,
around about 50 feet, something like that.
no, I don't think it's quite that high.
Yeah.
But it was high. It was very,
Mm,
very high. I would say more like about 35 feet, 40 feet.
mm.
But anyway, and I jumped. My dad caught me. And so he took me to
You.
Cape Town. He took me to Cape Town to hide me away,
Mm,
from my mom, because she had kidnapped me from him and he had taken me away because she wasn't looking after me properly. She was
mm,
young. She didn't know. She was interested in trying to do too much at once,
mm,
working at night, studying during the day, studying ballet at that time, trying to be a mother.
mm,
Those days, single mother just wasn't really feasible.
mm,
So anyway, he took me to Cape Town and he hid me in an Afrikaans area. And that was where I drowned in actually there was a block of flats called Tigerberg Flats across the road. Was it across the road or next door to? I think it was across the road from Tigerberg Hospital, which was the
mm,
most technologically advanced hospital at that time,
mm,
for laser surgery and for much of the technology. Obviously, the best hospital in the world was Grooteskies, where they had done the first heart transplant for surgery,
mm,
which was on the other side of Cape Town. But anyway, so where I drowned was literally they just had to carry me into the hospital. I was really lucky.
mm,
And it was a trained nurse that was his partner that I'd fallen into the pool with. So she took me out and did mouth to mouth.
mm,
Although I couldn't experience it because I was still outside of my body at that time,
mm,
if that makes sense.
mm,
Um, I was outside watching this little show going on with them
mm,
trying to get my body back, and she did mouth to mouth, mouth to mouth, mouth to mouth with me, and then they grabbed me and ran into the building, and then I blacked out somehow. And next thing I
mm.
was, all these people around me with beep, 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 beep nonsense.
What did that feel like when you were outside of your body and you were looking down? Was there a feeling of? I suppose there wouldn't be a feeling of fear or anything like that. Was there a feeling of confusion or something like that with it?
No. So okay. Obviously, when I left my body, it was the most painful experience in the universe. And then this little gland in the top of my head popped and it squirted all this liquid. felt like jelly being squid into the top of my brain.
Mm.
And then I felt the vibration starting to speed up and speed up and speed up. And then I felt this high, this euphoria, this beautiful feeling of like, wow. And the vibrations increased until they took me out of my body. And the vibrations were just increasing and increasing, the speed, the tempo, and the vibrations were getting louder. The sound was getting more intense. And by that stage, I was watching the universe unroll. Like, it's almost like a ball of wool with
Mm.
three pieces of wool coming out of it, like a
Mm.
red, yellow, and a blue wool, and they're just unwinding.
Mm.
The whole universe is just pulling apart.
Wow.
And with that, your memories and everything. And then that process had completed, and I was going towards what looked like a dome above me. Very interesting. I'll never forget how I was like, damn, that's a funny shape. Because this whole thing that I was in turned inside out, right? Very weird. The world turns inside out. I'm like, okay, inside out. Okay, got that. Compute. Then I was like inside a dome, which seems like it's going to turn inside out again. And I was going towards the light. And the closer I was getting to this membrane, the more I was remembering where I was from. I was
Mm.
remembering, oh my gosh. And then there was this, I'll never forget, at age 3, I was like, what the hell was that? What the hell was it doing there?
Mm.
That's not right. I did not belong there. There was that very clear recognition that I did not want to be in that place. That place
Mm.
was not where we belong.
Mm.
And like, thank God I get to go home.
Mm.
And then I was merging with this boundary where there's just light. And in that moment, something pulled my awareness down. And I obviously you just look with consciousness.
Mm.
And I could see down there through like a tunnel my body in the pool, and I could see Mariki, who was my stepmother for a long time,
Mm.
getting up and jumping into the pool. And I'll never forget how I instantly flashed down to the water, and I tried to shout to her and say, no, leave me.
Mm.
Don't leave me. And she jumped right through me. She dived
Mm.
right through me to get my body because I
Wow.
wasn't like physically,
Yeah, yeah,
like
yeah.
trying to stop her. I was like, no, no,
Mm.
no. I'll never forget thinking like, why did you do this to me? Why did you bring me back here? Did you have
Mm.
any idea of where I was going? Like, you brought me back here. Like, what have I done to deserve this? There was that instant recognition, but I was never the same again
Mm.
because my ESP had awoken like a crazy level because of that.
Mm.
So everybody I looked at, I would see their energy bodies, and I would see the beings around them and their pasts and their futures like
Mm.
bouncing out of their corners of their eyes.
Mm.
And so that sensation that you were talking about is a very abstract sensation
Mm.
of, I actually thought I had brain damage when I was young because
Right.
of that,
Yeah.
because my brain didn't work in the same way that other people's worked. And I
Mm.
thought, well, wonder if that's something wrong with me.
Mm.
And I noticed that when I was 3 and 4, I started telling people stuff and people reacted really badly. Like I told people like, okay, you're going to die on that date there on that place
Mm.
like this. That's what's going to happen. And then it would
Mm.
happen. And then like the neighbors started talking about this child possessed, this
Mm.
some devil child. And then I knew who had been like, someone had been murdered, and I foresaw it. I saw it. And that's why I went to a place where there was ghosts, and I explained to them that there's a ghost here because, and I knew the name of the man. He was murdered there, and I knew the date and the time he had been murdered, and I knew who had murdered him. And the people
Mm.
got really freaked out because they knew that person had lived there,
Mm.
and we had
Right.
just recently
Okay.
come to live there. There's no way this kid could know
Mm.
history from the street like from 5 years
Yeah.
ago.
Yeah. Yeah.
No ways. So people were scared of me, and then there were other things that happened, and I would continually have these dreams, and I would tell people what's going to happen in the future when, like way in the future, when they'll have robots on the streets fighting against us like
Mm.
machines, and people will have pieces of machines inside their
Yeah. We're
bodies.
not far off that now, are we?
Yeah.
Quite scary. Yeah.
And yeah, yeah,
Mm.
yeah. And so I would tell people that, and I would cause trouble as well. Like, I remember there was a really well known family The guy was a priest. I think he was one of the pastors. No, he was a layer on of hands, guys. Yeah.
Like a
My
hands-on
dad was
healer.
a yeah, but in the church,
Mm.
right? My dad was a gospel musician who was really well known, and he played in all the gospel churches. And I remember creating a storm because I sat down with the family. We'd gone over to theirs for supper. And after supper, we were sitting in the living room, and I was laughing at him and saying, "Well, what about your other wife?" His wife was sitting next to me. He was laughing, "What other wife?" And I looked at him, I said, "Come on, you know your other wife." And I turned to his wife and I said, "You know, his other wife is her name." And it was a friend of hers. And I said, "You know, he lied to you last Thursday. He said he was going to be working late." And I told her the name of the hotel and the room number where he had been with her. And instantly they started arguing. She was like, "How can this
Wow.
kid know this?" But she knew what I was saying because it was confirming her suspicions, whatever they must have been. And so I remember they got divorced. And so that was quite a shock for me because I really liked the little girl I was playing with, who was their daughter. We got on really well. And so I just had a lot of issues like that. And children used to react to me when I was really young. They would join me in a kind of a telepathic meta concert union of sorts, where we would talk with one voice in like a telepathic state. They did that on some horror movies.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. So that was happening with me when I was a kid.
Yeah,
With neighbors' kids. So like it turned out I wasn't allowed to play with children. I was banned from, like, nobody wanted me to play with their kids. They were scared of me. And the adults used to cross the road if they saw me because they were like literally scared of me because I would know their secrets.
yeah.
It turned out a lot of people had secrets. They didn't want other people to know it. I was like a secret divulger. I would tell everybody's secrets to everybody else and be like, "Oh, I
Wow.
know you. You do. You know?" Yeah. So I learned as a child, like, okay, this is a problem. So I would sit and stare out of the window for hours. That became my entertainment. My dad was like, "What are you doing?" I'm thinking. But I enjoyed it. I was never unhappy. So yeah, I had to adapt very fast as a child. Um, and then learning to control that again, because at 5, I was living again with my mom. She had found me, court case was starting, and I'd gone to stay with her for a holiday. And I used to spend the weekends with her. And she lived at a place called Sequentially, which is above Hart Bay. It was the highest place where there were any cottages or houses, right next to the forest in those days, here in Cape Town. And I used to walk off, and my guys used to say, "Don't worry about your mom. She can't think about you now." So they used to do something to her mind that she couldn't
Right.
think about me.
Right. To just
And I'd
block
be
it
out,
off.
yeah, I would go off into the forest on my own, and they would teach me to call animals, snakes, cockles, spiders, scorpions, all sorts of things out of the wilderness. I would call them, and they would come to me, and they would come on my hands, and they would like be with me. And animals and all sorts of things would come to me. Birds would come to me, and they would come and like sit with me. And they used to teach me, used to go out there and teach me how to connect with the wildlife, like my ancestral guides. And they had been with me all the time. And I remember them telling me that we're going to go away. I was so sad. I was like, "No, you can't go away. You guys are my friends." They were like, "We got to
Well,
go."
you're the only ones that'll speak to me.
Yeah, it was a little bit like that. So they told me they had to go, and I had to give my mom a gift, which was a scorpion. So I had to call the scorpion out of the forest. It was like sort of like their parting initiation gift of sorts. Weird as that sounds. And I had to take the scorpion to my mother and give it to her as a gift. And when I gave it to her, she screamed and slapped my arm. And I'll never forget the sensations of the vibrations that her slap left on my arm, and how the vibrations moved through the arm. And I felt them change all the vibrations in my body till they got throughout. My whole body was vibrating at that frequency that she had hit my arm at. And that was the first time I experienced fear. And I was 5 years old, 5.5, 5 to 6. And then my guides left. And then it was 12 years old when they came back. And then I was crash coursed. I think it was the meditation and everything else that reawoken, forced that to happen. But I think
Mm.
it's also natural. At 12 years old, I've noticed this pattern in gifted kids. 5 to 6 goes away. 11,
Yeah.
12, it comes back. 11, 12 was when it came back for me, something like that. And well, I ended up in a situation where people were playing glassy, and things got really bad.
Mm.
And I entered into the space. And the moment I entered into space, it started spelling out Franklin medium, number two, Franklin medium. I didn't, what's that mean? I didn't think
Mm.
anything of it. I thought my secrets were my own from my childhood,
Mm.
because I didn't want anyone to know about like that other stuff, you know,
Mm.
because it only caused problems when people knew. And then these things started to manifest, and they started to become pulsokinetic, and things were moving around the room, and doors were slamming in front of faces, and mass hallucinations, and women were like just about getting raped in their sleep by entities,
Mm.
and it was getting bad. And I wasn't scared. I remember thinking, "Oh, this is quite funny." I was like, "This is all quite funny." I didn't find it scary. Found it almost amusing that
Mm.
this was happening, which is bizarre. And then it got really scary. We were hallucinating fires. We were nobody would. Everybody was so scared that they were wanting to sleep in together.
Mm.
So like 7, 8 people sleeping together in the same room, because everybody was too scared to sleep anywhere else.
Mm.
And it was holidays. It was like a school holidays. So the oldest girls were like 17, and the Rangers were 16, 15, and myself and my friend Carvin, we were the youngest. We were like 11, 12,
Mm.
And that's when I was having these experiences, falling asleep with white light was burning me like from the inside out. And I'd wake up screaming, and everybody was freaking out, like, what's happening? And I was like, no, it's cool. It's just I'm being burnt by like white light. I'm like, I'm traveling through the sun or something that's quite intense. Otherwise, it's cool. And I had a good sense of humor when I was young. Found everything quite funny. So, I mean, once you've drowned, like, what is there?
Mm.
What can they do to you?
Yeah.
So, um, yeah, I then had to call on beings, and one of the beings came to me and taught me how to remove beings and send them back and seal the space.
Mm.
And I was like, "Is that all there is to it?" I was like, "Well, why must I do it?" And they were like, "Well, you've got this um, materializing magnetic body type." I was like, "Okay." It was the first time I heard about it. Then I'd heard about it from older gentlemen after that. So I did it, and I've sent these spirits away. And I was like, well, that's interesting, because now I can still communicate with ones at will. And I remembered, oh my gosh. So that was the awakening of telepathy and all of that for me. And
Mm.
I had to sort of take control of my mediumship abilities. But I was able to keep it a secret. And it obviously made me hungry to learn, to study
Mm.
everything I could about the occult. So I spent a lot of time in very old Kafta bookshops and book stores, book places where they used to get a lot of books, old books in like the backs and boxes and stuff. And I used to go crawling through the boxes looking for any books that were like Old English or Middle English. And,
Mm.
I was obsessed with old books. And that's when I met people came to me, like older people. And I had a lot of friends who were older than me. But like all my friends thought like, are you screwing people's parents? Like, are you screwing his mother? I'm like, no, I'm just buddies with it. I go visit my friends and I hang out with his mother for like 2 hours. Like
Mm.
we'd have long conversations. Like people would be like, that's not right, dude. Like, I'm like, I didn't touch her. I'm not having sex with anybody's mothers. I must have had about 3 people thinking I was having sex with their mothers. And which was a bit weird. But and older people, I sort of got on with them because I could talk to them about these things: philosophy, spiritual psychology. I couldn't
Mm.
talk to my peers because they wouldn't get it. Yeah,
Mm.
they just wouldn't grasp it. And so that was when I remember the first guy who I met. He was actually a friend of mine's father. It was really interesting. And he'd taken one look at me and he pulled me aside and he said to me, "You do realize you've got ESP. And I said to him, how do you know? You know what I mean? Like, who are you? What do you know? How do you know? And he started talking to me about a group that he was connected to. And so he sort of opened doors for me and sort of connected the dots to me. And then I got like directed where to study, what to study. I think they were Masons. My school was also aware of me because I was very aggressive when I was young. Obviously, you know, I was a fighter. I was bullied when I was really, really young. Now going back, I was in an Afrikaans school, so I was beaten up by all the kids. So I came home when I was 5. I said, Dad, this isn't working. You got to teach me to box because my
Yeah.
dad was a professional,
Yeah.
right? He came from a line of prize fighters. So he used to have an apprentice when he was younger, and he was a warrior, a boxer from a boxing family that used to do it professionally. So he taught me to fight, but he taught me to fight for the street. I said, Dad, you got to teach me how to be like lethal because these kids are coming at me 2, 3, 4 at a time. Like, I've got to be able to handle them. So my dad taught me to fight, to protect myself, and like bare knuckle, the old Irish ways. Yeah, getting a bigger boy to give me a hiding bare knuckle so I can learn to toughen up. That's how they did it. And I demanded that it was my right, my birthright. I'm Irish, Dad. You can't take this from me. Come now. You got this. You told me how you were taught to fight. I want to learn the way you learned. He was like, yeah, no, I don't think so. I forced him. Black eyes and broken lips. And he used to cry. I used to say, come on, Dad. It's my medicine.
Yeah.
So anyway, then when I went to high school, I had obviously learned to like really fight. So I was very a little bit dominant in a way, but I was very against bullying. So I'd had like huge impacts on my school, like the older boys, you know, big impact. Like I KO'd a couple of people, you know, and I was very clear about like ending all that hazing nonsense with the younger kids when I was 15. And I was literally like, I was too dangerous to get into a fight with a schoolboy because I would literally hospitalize them and they knew it. So, so I was, you know, they had to ban boxing because they put me in the boxing ring and I told them, don't put me in the boxing ring. They put me in the boxing ring. I said, you can't put me in the boxing room with these kids. I'm going to hospitalize someone. I said, sir, I guarantee you someone's going to go to hospital. And of course, 2 seconds after the bell, someone was hospitalized and they had to ban boxing from the school. So like I warned them. I said to them like a lot of times, he thought I was joking because I was always laughing. I always had a sense of humor, you know. Just telling him, oh, I'm going to hospitalize this guy. Ha 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 ha.
Douche.
But so anyway, I'd gone to high school, and in high school, our teachers, it's the oldest Anglo-Saxon high school in Sax in South Africa. Yeah. And they gave us the full thing about which is the Ursha stone and where the Ursha stone came from and the traditions of Sax. And they play the last post twice a day. You know, you got to stand to attention. It's lots of military influence and all of that. So my teachers, some of them were aware of this because they used to meet up and do things and wear black like gowns and go underneath the swimming pool into a secret place and do things on like solstice holidays. And I knew that these were sacred dates and I knew they were carrying insignia and stuff because I'd studied enough of the occult and magic to know what they were up to. And so I was like getting some of my classmates, schoolmates saying, do you understand what's going on here? Like, and obviously as a kid, I was like figuring out who the Masons were and the Illuminati. And I was like, holy shit, this, excuse my French, the school I'm at is one of those. Like, what am I going to do? So I had very open, very frank conversations with my high school master as well. And he was a Mason. And he had offered me something like really, after we did our IQ test, he came to me and said, listen, I've spoken to the Old Boys Foundation and we want you to drop OSA and pick up Latin. And I said, excuse me? I'm standard 8. That's like O level. Like, I'm O level. He said, no. We've seen your IQ test. You can't lie to us. You're the biggest underachiever. We know that you can handle this Latin in like 2 years, no problem, and still get distinctions if you work. Because we're going to pay for you to go to law school. I said, excuse me? He said, the Old Boys Foundation, we will pay for you to go to law school. We've got a future for you in politics. Because I was also the public speaker in my school. I used to do the public speaking because I just didn't give a damn what anybody thought. Stick me on a podium, I'll talk because I just don't care.
Mm.
So they wanted to turn me into someone. I ended up having a conversation with my headmaster. I said, sir, let's be honest. I'm going to be the guy on the streets with a placard
Mm.
standing against you guys. We're on the opposite side of the team here.
Mm.
I know who you are. I know who you represent. I know who the Old Boys Foundation is, and there's no way I will ever join that clique. Sorry.
Mm.
No amount of
Yeah.
money, no amount of anything is going to bring me to your side. I'm going to
Mm.
be someone who opposes you guys. So I knew
Mm.
that when I was 15. Like I had a very clear idea of what I wasn't going to do,
Mm.
that I wasn't going to go and get a degree, and that I was going to follow the world of the occult for my whole life.
Mm.
And so that took me to a point where they tried to get me to leave my high school a couple of times. She asked me to leave. I was like, no. So my mom's crying next to me. Headmaster telling me to leave the school. I'm saying, no, I'm not going to do it. He's looking at me with big eyes, like, what do you mean you don't have a choice? I said, I don't see the paperwork, sir. And the paperwork needs to be specific. And
Mm.
if you do present me with the paperwork, I'm going to be taking that to the Board of Education, and you know where that's going to end. So I'm not leaving the school. You can't make me leave the school. I know you can't, so don't pretend you can. So I didn't leave the school. My mom stopped crying. She was like, yeah, what he said. So they tried that again. They couldn't. And they kept wanting me to leave the school because I was disruptive. I refused to open textbooks. I refused to do what they told me. I refused to do homework. I refused to do anything. My
Mm.
attitude was, when it comes to writing end-year exams, I produce the goods. So as far as I'm concerned, you can all just bugger right off.
Mm.
You know, if as long as I'm passing my exams, I don't give a damn what you have to think or say about it. You
Mm.
cannot claim that I'm. And my marks in my exams are always like double what they were during the term. They were always trying to fail me or mark me down.
Mm.
But during the exams, I was like a bird that flew free without opening the textbooks.
Mm.
And I used to laugh in the teachers' faces and say, this nonsense, you know? You can't get me to learn this history because it's lies.
Yeah.
You will not shovel this down my throat. I was like, you won't shovel that down my throat for physics. I'm sorry. I don't believe it. I've got
Mm.
different ideas of physics, and I have my own sort of ideas building in my mind since a child. So I rejected everything. I even rejected the way they spelt words.
Mm.
And that took me to the point where I left school. Then I became a restaurant manager. I was actually the youngest restaurant manager in South Africa, running a big shop. And 226 covers. Yeah, it's a big
Mm.
restaurant
Mm.
and a big staff. And then I realized this is going to make me get old and die and get heart attacks and stuff because it was like
Mm.
so stressful. I just woke up one morning, threw the keys in, so I'm not doing this anymore.
Mm.
Must have been like 21, 22. I was 22 because I'd been trained. By the time I was 21, I got my, license, and then I did it for another like 6 to 8 months. I just said, no, this isn't my life, and I changed what I was doing. I just started really focusing on my inner development, rebridged the gaps with my mom because we had had terrible fallouts. Sort of found my mom again as like my best friend
Mm.
because we hadn't spoken in like 2 years.
Mm.
There'd been a lot that happened when I was young, a lot that happened when I was growing up,
Mm.
and decided I was going to go to the Himalayas. And I didn't know how I was going to get there. I didn't mind. And then the idea gave to me, just get rid of all your possessions. I was like, oh, that's an
Mm.
interesting concept. So I got rid of all my possessions. I just started practicing sadhana all the time. And before I knew it, like things were lining up. People were like, we want to give you a ticket. I was like, no, why do you want to give me a ticket? We want you to go to Canada to look after a boat, like a really old, like a 20 million US dollar boat at that time,
Mm.
which was like some very spectacular 90, 91, 98, how many foot schooner. It was beautiful, entire teak boat, very expensive. And they didn't have anyone they could trust, my circle of friends. And so I was like, okay, I'll go look after the boat. But I was living on a boat which was for a trekker, which had been remodeled after it had been capsized in the Pacific during the Cape to Rio. And a friend of mine had bought that boat. And so I was just staying in the boat moored in the waterfront, and I was like just living simple.
Mm.
Take my guitar, go and busk, get some fruit and vegetables, share it with the street kids, and that was
Mm.
my like all
Mm.
I needed. I didn't want to desire anything, and I just practiced meditation, and I realized the Himalayas were calling me like viscerally, and so I didn't want to go to Canada because I was actually busy organizing a Psytrance festival party, big one in Cape Town with a couple of friends, but I was like begged to go. So I was like, okay, I'll go. And I went, and then coming back, he was like, well, there's a few $1,000. So I said, well, I didn't do it for the money. He said, well, take the money. I was like, oh, I suppose this is my way to India. Thank you.
Mm. Mm.
So I went to go and live in Israel for what was going to be a short visit. But on the second day of being in Israel, I'm sitting on the beach and I meet this couple, American couple, and they put me on the phone, and on the phone there's Philippe, who's like, you must come, you must come. This is the divine providence, you must come. I was like, okay. So I go to Chofak Ziv, which is probably one of the most important places in the whole of Israel, historically, to do with activism. Eli
Mm.
Avivi lived just down the road from there, who was one of the biggest activists in the 60s. And the guy who was managing that beach, because it was a private beach, was 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 actually an ex teacher of the Kabbalah from the Hebrew University in Jerusalem, the
Mm.
Kabbalah Institute. These are the guys that have the Imran scrolls and all those extra scrolls that we're not allowed to get. That
Mm.
they've only allowed some of the Nag Hammadi scrolls to be released. For example, was it Nag Hammadi or the other ones? No, the Dead Sea Scrolls.
Mm.
Um, they've so anyway, he and I just clicked, and he was like, I see you are very, spirale. You got spirale in your eyes. Ah. And so he was like, you hear of the Kabbalah? And I was like, yeah, of course. This is what I practice, but a hermetic version. And so I got very close to him over the Kabbalah. And then I had people from the Hebrew universities to come and spend like weekends with me on my beach and just talk Kabbalah. So it was a very
Mm.
special time. So I ended up staying there for like a year because I met the whole faculty, well, not the whole faculty, but a number of the faculty of the Kabbalah Institute. And the people who had the scrolls were discussing with me what were in the scrolls. And I was like,
Mm.
come on, give me more, give me more. Why can't we see those scrolls? Can't you let me read them? Can't you, give me a
Mm.
translation, please? And they were like, no, we're not allowed to because it discusses extraterrestrials. I was like, okay. So they said that would not be cool for the Pope. And there's more going on. There's a lot more than that's being said.
Mm.
So I was like, okay, well, that makes sense because I'd been connected with extraterrestrials um, from the 90s when they'd first appeared to me and started teaching me. They were one of the groups that started teaching me. So I'd have a lot of guides of my life,
Mm.
had connections with inner earth, with some brotherhood down there.
Mm.
They seemed to be a brotherhood of men who used to work on me, who were connected to me through the Pleiadians that I used to work with.
Mm.
And then I just ended up from there going via England straight to India, Nepal, and the Himalayas. And I was preparing myself to release everything and just go up into the mountains with nothing. And that was when my dad passed. And
Mm.
then he came to me while I was living next to Gampaha monastery. Gosh, these kids are just off the hook, man. Kids more interested in watching porn than anything else that are part of the Tibetan upper class. There's a whole conspiracy. I'll tell you about it sometime. What happens in Nepal with the Tibetan story, with the monasteries. But I was staying in a village next door to the monastery because I wasn't going to go and join the monastery. I'd sniffed it out and I was like, this isn't right. This is not the promo that I got.
Mm.
And after checking out some of the monasteries, I decided to just be up there. But I had a connection with some of the monks who I used to go and spend time with in the monastery and in some of the other surrounding monasteries as well. There were a few up there. So my dad came to spend 3 days with me. He gave me something and then he left. I had this like heavy thing. I was like, okay, this thing's heavy. Like he gave me a baton in
Mm.
the etheric form. And I was like, now I've got this thing. I've got to carry this thing around with me. Wow, this is something else. And I was like, this changes my whole path. It
Mm.
was going to be such an easy path, which is going to climb the mountains and go and face living, dying, whatever. I was happy to face life and death, whatever it was. So back to the drawing board. I'm back via the UK. Um, after that point, and then came back to India. And in India, I met some great masters from different times. Um, the first master I met when I landed in India, I literally landed, my feet touched the ground, and the electricity was so much, I was crying for about 3 hours, just
Mm.
tears. And then I went to go and find some random place to sit down and wait for hours and hours and hours till it was really dark. And then he came to me because I was waiting for him. And he drew the whole timeline of my life. And I had an ex-wife with me then too, who I had met in, we weren't married yet, but she was a very close partner to mine who I'd met in the UK. And she was very open as well. And he first did my timeline, and then he did her timeline for her. And she had an issue that he needed to help her with. She had taken on some energy from a man in the past, which was really not good. And he knew all about it, of course. And he did something to help her. And um, after he drew my whole timeline for my whole life, which is quite a mind blowing thing, and in detail, like jumping through the window, everything.
Mm.
He even had my mom's car accident in there, like when she almost died, and my death experience. He said that was when you first were called by the Krishna,
Mm.
then when you drowned. So he knew everything,
Mm.
and he drew a timeline. In the timeline, he said this changes then, and I knew that was the dissolution with my ex-wife. I was like,
Mm.
wow. Then he drew everything else to my death. I was like, dang, you had to tell me that, huh? Dang, man. Couldn't you keep some mystery?
Yeah, yeah.
So he then sat down with me and he gave me the Om. We went into a deep telepathic space and he initiated me right there and then. And it wasn't like external like bells and toys and stuff. It was
Mm.
on the inner planes.
Mm.
And like he drew me out of my body towards him. And
Mm.
we were sitting on the out in the etheric plane and he literally passed this arm from inside his head that popped out and came into my head and it was loud. I was like, oh my gosh, that's like when I died.
Mm.
That's ding. The lights went on. And from then on I just trained hard. I trained and trained and trained and trained and trained and fasted and trained and spent my whole life training and living in various different ashrams. I didn't need training per se from all the other gurus I met because I was already meditating like 12 hours a day
Mm.
and training more than that as well.
Mm.
That's just that part of it. Then there was like energy work and drumming and training with guitar to keep the brain balanced and then writing in my diary and writing poetry. So I would literally like, have like like a 16-hour day of training actually.
Wow, yeah.
And that was just every day. That was my
Mm.
life.
Mm.
And trained in various different places until I was like, I'm ready to go into the jungles. And I was like, um, Emily was with me. I said to her, why don't you go into one of these ashrams? And she was like, no, no, I want to go with you. I said, well, I might not come back. Do you know what I mean?
Mm.
This is real. I'm going into the jungles and I'm not coming out. I'm
Mm.
going to live there. And she was determined and she was very sensitive. She was also training a lot, training hard, not as hard, but training very hard, meditating 6 hours a day, whatever.
Mm.
She was behind me, like 15 years behind me in her start of her training. So she had a long way to catch up in that sense, but she used to push herself too hard. So into the jungles, and in the jungles, there were these. I ended up finding a place called Kunumbigala, which is one of the places where the second generation Ahahita, the Buddha, set up. And there were all these monks that weren't physical. They were there. And there was this place where there was this cave, which I found. I went like, I want to stay in this cave. That was the cave of some very important saint from the Buddhist tradition. Like nobody went in that cave. I set up shop there. Like, this is my cave now. Da, 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 da. And there were all of these other beings that were there all the time. And so it was like a very mysterious place. And obviously being deep in the jungle, there was just wilderness. Like, big snakes, lots of elephants, wild boar, black bear, brown bear, everything else in between, buffalo. So I ended up in a buffalo stampede, walking through a buffalo stampede one day. Had no choice. Salt pan, buffalo stampede, out it comes. My ex-wife was like, what do we do? I said, we walk through it. She was like, are you kidding? I said, no, we do this while we're walking. We wave them down. And it worked. It worked. And they made a little gap for us. So we walked through the buffalo stampede, and all you can see is dust and noise and dust in your eyes. And you see these horns going past like very fast. It's just more horns and horns. It's like this is an ocean of horns coming past you. You're like, whoa.
Wow.
And connected with various different guides through animals. I had very close encounters with lots of animals. Lots of animals. And then I was called to connect with the serpent, and I've called my serpent to me, and out came, and I was like, oh, you're kidding me. That thing's like, it's like 20 feet long. Like, you seriously calling it another one, like a smaller one? Like, I have to connect with this thing. So I ended up, was one of my most powerful connections was to kiss a serpent on the mouth, a big serpent in the wild. And being charged by bulls in formation because you come out through the wrong side of the forest, and having to stare a bull down when he's charging you because there's nowhere to run. And then becoming connected with those animals, friends. They make a circle around you. They control you. They're very intelligent. And of course, the elephants. I fell in love with Ganesha. I fell in love with the elephants. They were so beautiful. They were so loving. I didn't know that they were killing people. Like 16, 17 kilometers towards the edge of the jungle, they were killing people regularly. Everybody used to shout if I came out to come get some supplies because I'd walk for like 20 Ks, 18, 19 Ks out of the jungle to get to the edge, to go to a tiny little place, which is like a tiny village, backwater, whatever. They've got like a tiny dukan, a tiny store that's open like 2-3 days a week. And all you can get there is like lentils and rice. And I'd be like, come for lentils and rice. Give me 30 kilos of lentils and, 20 kilos of rice. And I'd pack it up on my back and I'd walk through the jungles. And I lived barefoot. So that was a very powerful experience of connecting with nature. And that was where the shamanic awareness became fully entrained. There was also another shaman that I connected with, who was a Nepali shaman up in the Himalayas, who I spent time with in the Himalayan side, which the jungles aren't so wild because there's more villages in between. Where I lived in Sri Lanka, there's like 200 kilometers of jungle and there's nothing. You can literally get lost in the jungle.
Yeah,
and
yeah.
die. There's not much water out there. You got to know where the water is. So then, going back to India. Oh, I left there. I woke up one morning and I said to my ex-wife, I said to her, listen, there's a tsunami coming. I've been talking about tsunamis for a long time. I've been standing there looking at the sea going, well, what about when there's a tsunami? And she was like, that'd be crazy. I said, but what about when there's a tsunami? What about? I woke up that morning. I said, it's coming. We got to get out of here. And she realized I wasn't joking. And she had seen a lot of stuff with me. So she knew like to take me seriously. And so we got ourselves sorted out as quickly as we could. We got to the airport and we got out of the country. And that was just before Christmas, just before the tsunami hit.
Mm.
Remember, we went straight to the UK. We landed at her family's house. We were there for like 1.5, 2 days, and then the tsunami struck. And it struck where we were on the east coast of Sri Lanka,
Wow.
flattened the whole space.
Mm.
And I remember when we got there, telling the story of to her family that like we had to get out of there because there's a tsunami coming, and them like, oh yeah, 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 that
And
that
then it
arrogance. Like,
happens.
then they saw it on the
Mm.
news 2 days later. They were like, you were talking about this. This happened. Like, wow, how did that happen? Then they were a bit wary of me too. Um, but so after then went back to India and took a vow of poverty after living in Kendra ashrams, Nandeshwar ashram, and also another place called Lila Sevri ashram, and traveled around to different ashrams, to Tantra ashrams, um, to Brindaban, lived in Uttarkasi for a long time, for 2, 3 years as well, Uttarkasi, Uttaranchal. Lived on top of the Chotak Kailash with another Himalayan um, who was trained in different schools of shamanism and also Junakara lore, Kishigiri from the Giri lineage.
Mm.
So this was an interesting hybrid character. It's where I learned to speak a bit of Nepali and Pahari. Obviously, I
Mm.
speak some Nepali, Hindi, Pahari, some Urdu, because I lived out in India for like most of my life, my adult
Mm.
life. And so India became my inspiration, my place. And I did darshan. I lived up in the mountains, and got so open to the point where I was just getting darshan. People were just coming to me. I wasn't like asking for any of that. I was just like meditating all day,
Mm.
sitting by my fire pit, and the next thing I'd have this queue of people, and they want to come like sit by you. I was like, okay. And then I'd like give them advice or whatever as it was pouring out of me. My
Mm.
guides would come to me and say, "This one." They'd start talking to me, and so I had a lot of darshan, and I was like shocked. Like people were walking for like 3 days in the mountains to get to me because they'd heard
Mm.
about me. I was
Mm.
like you walked from where? Like from that, just about the border of Nepal. I was like, that's crazy to see me.
Mm.
Like,
Mm.
and then I saw once again, story of my childhood comes back to haunt me. I saw that two people, prominent people in the village, had killed a family and raped the woman and burnt the house down with the family, the baby, the man and the woman in the house.
Mm.
And I started calling this out. And this created so many waves in the village. And I started calling out the so called Brahmin, saying to the so called Brahmin that you aren't Brahmin. You're not Brahmin. This is not right. And I
Mm.
warned them all. I warned them all. Bye bye. I love you, my sweetheart. Okay, go safe. Bye bye. I love you. Okay. Shh. They're going for a walk. So, yeah, so I started confronting them. Why didn't you do anything about it? You all knew that house is up there. I hadn't seen the house physically. I hadn't seen the house physically, but I'd seen it in the fires, in the fire.
Mm.
Uh, and so I started calling these guys out. I started calling out the whole village. And it created a lot of storms. And they started freaking out. Then Navratri came and they tried to set me on fire. Well, they did
Mm.
set me on fire. Because we were sitting in front of a big bonfire. And someone came with one of those huge, they've got these huge metal bowls
Mm.
that you can, like, literally, it's a brazier you can carry a fire in. And they scooped out a whole chunk of the fire pit picked it up and put it on top of my head while I was in a trance.
Mm.
And my clothes burnt. My hair started getting on fire, and I was like on fire, and I just carried on meditating. And like everybody was like that's too much. That's like
Mm.
intense. So people started getting scared because they like realized this guy's protected by something.
Mm.
And then there was a outrage in the village. There was like people splitting. Some people were like, no, he's right. This murder happened like 15 years ago, but it's not right that
Mm.
people were murdered and we actually need to do something about it. And it got to the point where there was like almost a war starting in the village. So I said to my Emily, I said to her, let's just go. I don't want to cause trouble here. I've said enough. Like the
Mm.
karma's out there. My words have carried the momentum of Kali, and she
Mm.
will retribute because those guys got away with murdering and killing a child, and so when we were leaving, they tried to kill us.
Mm.
There was a path that left out of the village, and they came onto the thing with big boulders, and they came to try and throw them on top of us, and I went instantly slipped into a trance and threw words that knocked them over. They fell on the floor and they started crawling off like children, smiling, staring, like as if they were suddenly on like a lot of MDMA or something.
Mm.
The whole village saw this. And I turned around and I said, you all knew what they were going to do. You come to watch them kill us. Because a lot of people were like feeling bad because they were all like, everybody knew what had happened. They
Mm.
just didn't say anything. You understand?
Mm.
Because there's like a kind of a corruption there with money and stuff.
Yeah.
You understand? And so I pronounced a um, almost like a curse. It was only 2 times in my life I ever pronounced a curse. Always felt bad about it. But that you would come and stand there and watch them killing us. You
Mm.
know they were there. And nobody warned us. We
Mm.
didn't see them on the rocks until I came up and I saw, and luckily I'd spelled my staff. So I had 108 names in my staff that I used to chant into my staff so that I could slip into a trance fast if I needed to
Mm.
and use whatever force I needed to protect us because there were times when people tried to kill us. Oh yeah, I didn't mention that. Times when people wanted to rape my ex-wife because she was a yoga queen.
Mm.
So yeah, that was such a intense chapter for me. And then we left that space and we found other ashrams, a Tantra ashram where we stayed for a while, where there was a dark guru who was trying to do weird stuff.
Mm.
And so his guru, the guru that was the guru of his, came to me in my meditation through the tree to talk to me. And I was like, oh, okay. And he was explaining to me that this guy's bad and what he's doing is like the Black Tantra is not right. And so I sort of had to confront him in a way in the ashram as well,
Mm.
because he was using his Black Tantra to get girls
Mm. Right.
and they would get hurt psychologically and what in all different kinds of ways.
Mm.
And then he got scared of me. He got really scared of me. And so the whole ashram started to get very weird. Um, it's a story of my life when I've been in ashrams. Sometimes gurus are wary of me because they don't know what I've done, my
Mm.
past.
Mm.
Because I'm not scared.
Yeah.
That's the one thing I'm not. So after leaving there, um, ended up going to another Guruji's ashram, who was a Guruji Mohan. Beautiful, beautiful Kendra Guru. I was like, I'm done with all these Tantra ashrams now. All these people are just trying to do black Tantra. I'm so bloody tired. It's so 1980s. I'm so done with that. And we spent a lot of time there until an accidental, well, they tried to abduct my ex-wife. They had to get her away from our dharamshala where we were sleeping because I had all wards and bells and alarms set up around my space. So
Mm,
no entities, nothing could come into that space without me being aware.
mm,
And an angel appeared to her, but said she had to go far away from me in order for it to manifest. Like 300 yards, 200 yards, 300 yards out. It's like 2 o'clock in the morning in the fields of an
mm,
ashram. And my alarms were ringing. And I sort of didn't wake up. I came into the etheric. And so I could see her through the walls standing in the field. So I projected to her and I was with her where she was. Obviously, you don't move by walking, you move by thought
mm,
through the etheric plane. Because I wasn't on the astral at that point, I was on the etheric. And I saw this line coming out of her head, and I jumped into the line, and it took me right back to its source, this angel. And I was like, yeah, you're too flashy for my liking. I'm not buying it. So I went into a deep trance and found the Trisul within my mind, the laser, and I put the laser beam onto this beings to shine just the truth back. Like, okay, reflect this back at me.
mm,
And it shattered. And there were three insect beings sitting on a kind of throne
mm.
in the center of a rugby ball shaped craft, like a disc. Obviously, I
Mm,
could see through the whole walls, but I could see them sitting in the formation
mm,
on the center, the matriarch. They were insects. I want you to understand how scary these things looked.
mm,
And that the matriarch had this thing that I had broken. It looked like liquid metal with like a kind of a handle that you hold in front of your, they hold it in front of their faces. And it must somehow modulate the brain stream of frequency so they can be whatever you need them to be. Jesus, Buddha, angel,
mm.
whatever. They can manifest in that form for you.
Like shapeshift and move
Yeah,
into a different form that's pleasing to the other person to make them believe that they're okay. Mm.
exactly. And so my ex-wife was standing on the ground and she was watching. I could feel her perception on me and them. And instantly I grabbed them. Not even sure how I grabbed them, but I was angry. I was
Mm,
like, you're messing with my wife. And I grabbed them and I had them in some kind of a thrall. Like I just grabbed them in my mind's hand and they couldn't move. And I was like staring at them. I was like, okay, well, you're the matriarch, so I'm going to deal with you. Because the other two were just sort of, she was using them as plugins.
mm,
That makes any sense. So I started drilling into her mind and I started drilling through her primary defenses and they were so weak. I was like, wow, these things are so weak.
mm,
Spiritually, mentally, they're so weak. They've got these very scary bodies, but you know,
mm.
they're nothing like human beings.
Nothing within. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. And then I heard my ex-wife's thoughts coming to me saying, what about free will? Is this right? And I suddenly go, yeah. Scratching my head like, yeah, yeah, she's right. So I let them go and they blinked their craft and took off. And I think that was the biggest mistake I ever made
Mm,
because I was getting close to a truth that she didn't want me to see. And if I went any further, I would know why she was so scared. She was
mm,
scared, but she wasn't scared of me. She was scared of what they were going to do if I got through, found
mm.
out.
Right.
If I found out was I wasn't supposed to know she'd be in trouble. I want to know
Mm,
who she's going to be in trouble with.
mm,
And what is it I'm not supposed to learn now while I'm looking into your mind?
mm,
And so I never got to see what their agenda was, why they were there, what they were really up to. And they blinked away. That was the last time my ex-wife meditated with me. That was the beginning of the ending for our relationship because she vowed never to meditate again.
mm,
And we just grew further and further apart because I was still practicing my sadhana and she wasn't.
mm,
And then she started changing. She started getting interested in like weird kind of people. She started lying. And it got to the point where she was abducted in front of my eyes
right.
at a Bombay guest house. in Lakshmanjula. Those of you that know Rishikesh, the other side of the river, Lakshmanjula, Bombay Guest House, go there. I followed her out of the doorway on the second floor. So it's 3 floors up to the roof where we used to do yoga. I used to meditate. She used to do hatha. And she ran out in front of me, and I was behind her, 8, 9 feet behind her. And she ran out onto a square platform right in front of me. And I could see her right there. And then there was a flash of lightning, and she was gone. And I was like, she was there. There was a flash of lightning, and she was gone. I was like, this doesn't happen. And I knew it's those same, because she had been speaking to those beings again, but we were disconnected, and they'd been talking to her in her dreams. I knew it. And I wanted to talk to her about it, but I couldn't communicate with her because we were so far apart. And it was like getting to the point where I was like, I'm going to have to take her back to her family so she can leave me or something, because this is weird. And I ran through Lakshmanjula, and I got everybody in the town, and I called them all. Everybody knew me well because I speak Hindi, I speak Urdu, and they all knew me. I get to know everybody. I knew all the Westerners that came there. I knew all the Westerners that lived there, and I knew all the locals that lived there. They all knew me. Like, they'd been there a while. Probably spent like 3.5, 4 months there. Used to come back there every once in a while, So I knew the people in Lakshmanjula. Like that place, Lakshman, the Manush was the manager there. He knew me well. I could leave like a big metal crate there with my things in. I've still got a metal crate there. I'm sure he broke it open and gave the things away. Maybe he didn't out of superstition. But anyway, so ran up and down. No one had seen her. I had everybody in Lakshmanjula looking for her. And I even went across the bridge to ask. Everybody knew her and me. I just have to rock up and just say, have you seen my wife? No, we haven't seen your wife. Why? Where is she? I said, I don't know. And now it was about 8 p.m. 8 p.m. to 9 p.m. I ran up and down. No one had seen. I had everybody looking for her. 10 p.m. like places were closing. They were still saying, sorry, we haven't seen her anywhere. I had the police looking for her as well because I knew the cops that were there too. They used to come up and down. And I came back to Bombay Guest House, and I was meditating on the roof, and then I felt a ping of her. Must have been about 11, 12 at night. And I went to Manush and said, Manush, you got to let me out because he locks the place at night. You can't just come in and out. But for me, I was like, I used to look after the place as well for him, make sure that the other Westerners didn't go too far, cause too much crap, And I followed the ping into the dark woods, about 1.5 kilometers out of town. And I had to walk through the forests, obviously without a torch or a light, but I always traveled without a light. It was the safest way to travel through the jungles at night, without a light. And especially in Sri Lanka, where there was poachers poaching for elephant. And I saw her through the trees, like a dark shadow, like a monkey, baboon, something crawling behind the branches. I was like, that must be her. But it felt like an animal. And when I got to it, it felt really weird. Like, who is this? Is this you? Yes, it's you. And she had missing time. She thought she had just been with me minutes ago. And I was like, no, you've been away for about 3.5 hours. She didn't believe me. She thought no, man, I was just with you now. I said, no, you've been gone for 3.5 hours. You disappeared from the roof in front of me. She said, no, I was with you now. So I had to bring her back. The next day, everybody was like, what happened to you last night? And then she realized I wasn't fooling her. And
Wow.
yeah, she had missing time. No recollection of anything at all. And so that was really like the seal for that relationship, in a sense, because they were rewriting her memories. I could see it. I was like, oh my gosh, what's going on here? I warned her. She always wanted to play with extra dimensionals, and I always kept telling her no. She was the only person I ever initiated. And so she had awoken to the astral planes and awoken to the energetic reality, and so she could see them and communicate with them. I kept warning her, saying to her, don't. She thought I was trying to hold her back.
Mm.
She wanted to keep up with me.
Right. Yeah. Yeah.
And she was like, "You're trying to hold me back." I'm not trying to hold you back. I'm trying to keep you
Mm.
safe.
Mm. So how do you keep yourself kind of, I suppose, grounded and in this reality between the physical and the altered states that you go into? How do you keep that diff? How do you? I mean, you must differentiate between them, but how do you keep that grounding within this reality?
Nature,
Mm.
trees,
Yeah.
um, trees. There's an old saying of touch wood.
Mm.
And I, okay, so going back to 1997, I had another death, but not a physical death.
Mm.
But I was sure that I died because I traveled out of my body, but through a into the water element.
Mm.
And I was thought I was clever. So I was creating these flashing tablet yantra doorways. And so I traveled out and I was like, wow, this is so cool. This is like silver surfing, you know. Surfing through these tunnels is so cool. Until I was like, where the hell am I? Where's my body?
Mm.
And I was like, ah, so you can go too far.
Mm.
Damn.
Yeah.
So I tried and searched for what seemed like literally weeks until I gave up and I realized, okay, by now my body must be dead because it's been weeks,
Mm.
almost a month. And then I was like harboring around. I said, so what now? And I was like living in this domain for long. And it was sort of between the astral and the etheric on the astral verge, if you can call it that. And obviously your thoughts create reality around you as you think. So you're creating your dream. That's where I learned about dream time. Like truly learned. That was my like real wake up call to dream time.
Mm.
That okay, so you literally create your entire reality around you in this astral plane. And then that is sort of created around itself in the etheric plane, and then the physical plane is created around that.
Mm.
But actually, the physical is held within the etheric, which is held within the astral, if you want to think in terms of dimensionality, because the physical is smaller,
Mm.
the etheric is bigger, and the astral is bigger in terms of, if you want to consider spatial. That's how it seems to me. And so, anyway, I was like, okay, this is cool, but like, I want this to stop now because I'm creating my reality all the time.
Mm.
It's getting a bit tiring having to choose what reality to create all the time. This is like really whatever you think becomes your surroundings.
Mm.
Anything that comes through your mind is literally takes form around you, which is why it's so important to prepare ourselves for death
Mm.
because we've got to go through this layer. And then they came. I was like, oh gosh, there they come. I could sense them, I could smell them, I could feel them coming, and I knew they were the archons. I just knew that in like my gut. And they were coming for me, and I was like, okay, let me outrun them. And I was like, okay, there's nowhere to run to. You can't outrun them. And then I discovered this other place. I was like, okay, what's this density? There's this real density behind everything. What if I go into that? And I went into that and I went deeper, deeper, deeper until like you're in this void, which is like infinite density. If
Mm.
that's something to consider, like just total density, you
Mm.
can't move. It's like you can't think, you can't move, can't anything. And so I'd go and hide in there, but then I can't do anything. I can't strategize. I can't make anything happen. When I
Mm.
pop out, I'm right back where I started. I was like, are they still here?
Mm.
Dang. Like time doesn't flow in that density place. So I was like conundrum. And for like a month, I had been arbing around. And then I don't know how long I ran away from these guys. And I don't know how long I tried to find ways to circumvent the system.
Mm.
But then I couldn't. And then they took me because I said, okay, well, let's do this. Let's do this. Let's
The
do
boxer
this.
came back out.
It was like, if there's only one thing to do, I'm going to fight. Let's
Yeah,
fight.
yeah.
But I couldn't fight them because they somehow took me somewhere, like dilated me through space and somehow. And then I was in this, can only consider it as a vortex. I was moving through a vortex and I was rotating downwards and I was rotating this way, that way, towards my left, behind,
Mm,
downwards. And I was staring at all the forms. I was like, okay, these are familiar. Um, so the archons are made out of smaller beings that are fitting together, that are made out of smaller beings that are fitting together, that are made out of smaller beings that are fitting together, that are made out of smaller beings that are fitting together, that are made out of smaller beings that are fitting together. And in the beginning, you're seeing the bigger beings. And as you're going down the spiral, you're seeing the individuals that are the parts of those individual, of the bigger beings.
mm,
And you're like, these are the forces of nature. These are
mm,
the structure of reality. And I was like, damn, this music is bewitching. There's this weird sound music that you're listening to as you're going down. And they're all lizard motif, and they all have different insignias on their armor.
mm,
And their armor's got particular insignias with relation to their rank. And
mm,
everything's ranked. Everybody's ranked. It's the first thing. It's about the beast's army. It's all ranked. The angelic army as well.
mm,
And so it's like a fractal structure of beings. When I talk about the chain of life on my videos, I'm always often talking about the chain of life. This is like the chain of life that moves through us.
mm,
Chain of beings that are part of a fractal structure of life, that are bigger beings making up bigger beings, making up bigger beings, making an infinite almost. Don't
mm,
know how far it goes. And I got to the point where I got to the bottom. I was like, oh my gosh, this is like, this is the abyss. I was like, holy crap, I know this. And none of what I'd learned worked. None of my magic was any use here. None of
mm,
my training, none of what I, none of my Vedic systems, none of my Kabbalist systems were of any good to me. The names of God were pointless down here. I was like, oh my God, what
mm,
do I do? And then this being came that was a changing being. It was changing all the time, changing, 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 had no form, continually changing. And it was like me and this being, and everybody was like watching us. The entire chain of life was around, focused on us, watching this duel. And it wasn't like a physical duel, it was like a psychological duel, spiritual.
mm,
This thing wanted to get into my head,
mm,
and I could resist with my will. But the more will that I applied to it, the more it pushed, and the more will that I applied, and it would like this battle went on.
mm,
I can't tell you how long this battle went on for, man.
mm,
It felt like it went on for days,
mm,
and it would wear me down, wear me down, wear me down, wear me down, and I'd get the second wind, like come out of nowhere, and I'd be like keeping my focus, and it couldn't break my focus. But the more intensely I focused, the more power I swept towards this being, the more it swept towards me, and it had
mm,
no form. So I didn't know how to repel it.
mm.
And this went on and on and on and on and on until some part of my heart said, shame, this poor being. What a dreary, like what a dreary job. Like, is this your 9 to 5, kind of
Mm,
thing. I suddenly thought, like, shame. Like, I felt a bit of compassion for this being.
mm.
The moment I felt compassion for this being, it shrank. I was like, are you kidding me?
After all that.
You kidding me? This is what you can't handle? So I opened my heart and flooded through compassion and love for this being.
Mm,
And it shrank from this huge changing thing
mm.
and it disappeared.
Wow.
It didn't exist.
Wow.
And there was this wobble that ran through the whole universe. And like this wobble ran through all of the beings. And it's almost like they turned around. Like those things that turn around. And now they weren't archons anymore. Now they were angelic. I was like, oh my
Mm.
gosh, the patterns have changed, the colors have changed, insignias have changed. And there was like these arias, these like music, these songs playing. And I
Mm.
could hear these beautiful songs. I was like, oh my gosh, listen to that. And it was like my heart started to vibrate open.
Mm.
And then I was moving this way around. And as I got higher, the arias got more intense. They got more beautiful. The songs became more whole. And the colors became more vivid.
Mm.
And there was law being passed to me from the beings I was looking at. They were passing me law. And I was like eating the law as I was going past, like I was eating something. And I was like so high, like extremely high, until there was like a mass consensus of like, that's enough. That's as
Mm.
much as is allowed. And I was like, there was a sorrow inside of me. I was like, oh, is that all I'm allowed? Because I could see this went on. There's so much more. It goes on
Mm.
up there. I was like, well, I want to
Yeah,
go up there. I want to get that. and and I was so inspired. And at that point, inside of my heart, I saw, what is the Christ? What do they talk about when they talk about the Christos? What is this first aeon of creation? It's like all of us are made out of this body of this being. You know
Mm.
that the smaller beings make bigger beings make. We're also part of that chain of life,
Mm.
and all of us, our souls have been made out of one being. There's
Mm.
one being that is basically given up its soul for all of us to have souls. I don't
Mm.
know if that makes sense.
Yeah.
And that one being is like the structure of the universe. It's like within
Mm.
us. And that being is in our hearts. And we are that being, and that being is us.
Mm.
And that being was there with me. And I was like, wow, this is looking very religious.
Mm.
This is going right back to my Christian orthodoxy idea. And the vibrations got faster and faster and faster. This being was inside my heart, sharing, showing me stuff and about me,
Mm.
and showing me like my weakness and that's the strength, what I thought was weakness. And the vibrations got so fast that it lifted me out of this place into my body. And my body was still sitting where I'd left it in lotus posture.
Mm.
But the sun was rising, and I realized, hold on, sun rising. I started my ritual just before from midnight. Midnight, I was meditating. That means I was only sitting for 6 hours. But I've got like at least 3 months of of like data computing in here. Like what just happened? 3 months of
Yeah.
data, six
Oh
hours here,
man.
3 months, 4 months. I don't know how many months, but a long time. And that was something that changed me fundamentally.
Mm.
And from that point, I was always grounded
Mm.
because then I realized that this dream time, is all that there is.
Mm.
And that this whole reality is dream time.
Mm.
So if you're absorbed into dream time, all you got to do to be grounded is to become fully present.
Mm.
It took me right back to the Zazen training, which my Shian
Yeah.
taught me. I was like, you come back to the beginning. Yeah. I was like,
Yeah. You just keep going
so
back
right.
round and round in cycles, don't you? In circles, and it all just comes back to where you started, and then you create another circle, and spiral around and round and round.
Back to the source. So
Yeah.
that's basically the story of my life,
It's
I think.
amazing, Franklin. Really is amazing.
Yeah.
And like my head is absolutely pounding from from the information.
I'm so
But
sorry.
no, but in a good way. In a good way. I know that, it's just opened me up to like a whole other level, and I felt such a wonderful vibration just going on between the two of us over the I just felt sucked in from by all of it. It was just hypnotic. It was a wonderful experience just being able to talk. And I think we need to have another video and go deeper into some of the things that we've talked about today as well.
How
I
long
can't.
will,
Well,
how
I
long
mean,
was I going on?
we've been talking for nearly an hour and 40 minutes now. So yeah, so you know, we've been so in there. I mean, I need to go and deal with an appointment at like 4 o'clock. So I've got like 20 minutes to deal with. But I really, really want to talk to you again and do another video for the channel.
Yeah.
Because I really want to dive deeper into the shamanism, your teachings, all the other things that we've discussed today. I want to find deeper topics within them to talk about with you because there's just so much in there from this 3 year old incident to now. There was just so much to dive into. So I would love to have you back on the channel if you're up for that at some point. It would be an
Be
absolute
an honor.
pleasure. And I'm sure the people that have watched this video today have found such deep insight, wisdom, maybe open something in within them that they need to have opened up at this point, because whoever watches this is meant to see it at the right time. So yeah, so wonderful blessings to you for today, for taking this time out. Is there anything you want to finish on today? Anything you want to?
I won't take too much time. Those of you that want to see my series one of 108 short lectures is like 10 minutes. Series two of 108 lectures is like 10 minutes, and they're both almost up. The second 108 isn't fully up. And they're very small thought for the day kind of notion,
Mm,
meditations with knowledge lectures sort of hidden in there.
mm,
So it's yahoo.com/, or the at sign at Bush Whisperer, capital
mm,
B, capital
mm.
W is in Bush and Whisperer.
And
So
I'll
yeah, come
also
and check
I'll
out.
link your YouTube as well below in the descriptions box. So anyone that isn't a viewer of yours and is a viewer of mine, or someone that comes across this video and finds mysticism and information and anything that just sort of lights up and something up within them, then they can come over to your channel and take in some of the delights that you share on your channel as well. So um
I want to get you in the hot seat too, brother.
I know. I'm itching to do that as well, so I can't wait. So anyway,
Oh,
I'll chat to you
bless you.
off camera, but we'll end this chat here, and I'll see you again soon.
Yes,
So
brother.
thanks for watching, everybody, and tune in for another video soon with the shaman. Bye for
Thank you
now.
so much for your um, energy, for your time, for this platform. God bless you,
You're welcome.
and hope to see you on the round table as well when you've got time.
Definitely,
Thank you all
definitely.
for watching.